Now, it's possible this goes without saying, although I'm going to say it anyway, just to make a particular point. The kernel is actually a piece of software. Now, it's a pretty complex piece of software, and what it does is really important, but at the end of the day, it's really just a piece of software. So we've got this software, and like most pieces of software, it has variables inside of it that get changed, altered, set, all of those things. One of the nice things here is that we can go look at some of these variables or parameters, if you want to think of them that way, and we can pull them out of the running kernel. So I can say, for example, sysctl net.ipv4 IP underscore forward. And this tells me whether this particular system is set up to forward packets from one interface to another interface if there happen to be multiple interfaces on this system. Right now, we've got this particular system set to IP forward. If I wanted to change that, I would again run sysctl. In this case, I'm going to say -w for write, and then net.ipv4.ip forward equals 0. Now we have set that to 0. So that's a change that's made on the fly. What if I actually want this to be persistent? Well, what I need to do then is I need to edit this sysctl.conf file, and that is where we can set these parameters. What I'm doing here is I am making changes in a file that gets read when the system is booted up so that all of these parameters get set when the system boots. So for example, I could say net.ipv4.ip underscore forward equals 1. The default is 0, but if I wanted to change that so that it did allow forwarding every time the system loaded up, I could uncomment this particular line. So there are a lot of different settings in the sysctl.conf file. We could spend a pretty fair amount of time going through and what they all mean. But if you want to go look at the different parameters that you can set within the kernel, you can certainly take a look at sysctl.conf. Now, if I want to look at these on the file system, where would I go for that? Well, that's actually fairly easy. So I'm going to go to a sudo file system. I'm going to go into proc and then sys, and then we're going to say net. And now here I can jump into IPv4. And now here are the various parameters. So all I have to do at this point is say cat IP forward, and this says 0. Now, if I were to go back and do my sysctl.conf thing again, and then if I were to say net.ipv4 IP underscore forward equals 1, now if I cat that file, now it actually says 1. So if you go into the proc file system under the sys directory, you will find what appear to be files indicating the settings for these various kernel parameters. So you can use sysctl, the utility, to change things on the fly. You can go into the proc file system, sudo file system. You can actually make changes there. I could echo a value into that file or what appears to be a file, and it would have changed. But of course, if I want these parameters to remain persistent across reboots, I have to go into sysctl.conf. Those are a number of different ways you can look at and manipulate the various kernel parameters that will adjust the way that the kernel behaves.